My Daughter the Terrorist, The Silence Voices ஆகிய ஆவண திரைப்படங்களை எடுத்த Beate Amestad அவர்களோடு உரையாடிக் கொண்டிருக்கின்றோம்.
When media people are around, you know, from the government and the state media, you can see they are just walking around freely, which means quite a lot of people had access to these places, even though the truth doesn't come out about the identity of these people and how it happened. These photos never came out actually.
You've been to many diplomatic, you've been involved with rubbing shoulders with the diplomats and journalists and all those prominent powers of corridors in the West. So has the perception changed since your movies came out?
You know, I don't rub shoulders. I very much, I very much, you know, I have a very low profile.
Okay.
Because it's, I prefer it that way, and it's easier for me to work that way, and so I don't really rub shoulders.
Okay.
I like to make my films, and I like to sort of make the films with characters that also are not big shots. And what the impact is, and how things change. It's you know, you make a film and then you let it out, and it flies out, and where it flies, and how it changes the thing, and if it not changes the thing, and how it's perceived. It's you know, I don't. It's not really.
No,
yeah.
I think the reason why I asked the question is that because before when you planned the first movie, My Daughter the Terrorist, you handpicked the characters of Catholic background. So you had some intention in your back of your mind that this will impact the Western audience, right? So once you've screened that, you have to follow up with whether that had in fact had achieved your goal.
I was very much surprised of how it was sort of everybody wanted the films all of a sudden, and I was really surprised. In the beginning, when I pitched a film for a Norwegian broadcasting, they told me they were not interested at all, and they told me who would be interested in such stories. Nobody, and nobody wants to broadcast a film about suicide bombers. They said nobody was interested, and I was a bit surprised and said, well, I am interested. And I just had, it was just, you know, I was just purely interested, and I didn't know how it would be.
Turn out to be.
No, I had no idea. I had no idea. And in some ways you never have any idea. It's about timing, it's about, you know, it has to do with a lot of things, whether a film launches and is received and it travels, and, you know, you can't really control it. You don't really know.
So you've been to Sri Lanka 3 times, you said, right? So during the peacetime, and then 2006. And then,
you know, I lived there from 2003 to 2006, and I went back briefly in 2009, just to sort of make sure, you know, I couldn't work there, and then I managed to sneak back a year ago. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you compare that the pre and post Mullavaykal, the people's lives in Vani? I don't know. You might not have been to Vani the second or third time around, but.
I was briefly in Vani just for a year ago, and what I saw I did not like. I thought it was complete destruction of a culture. I saw the patients at hospitals. I talked to doctors, but, you know, they couldn't interview them. I saw, you know, I think it was just horrible what I saw. I couldn't really film anything because there were so many soldiers patrolling everywhere. I was afraid to talk to people. I didn't know whether they would be harassed afterwards. I couldn't guarantee any of the people who helped me, and, you know, I couldn't guarantee anybody's safety and security. So I was very careful.
So how about those the doctors? They were there during the last few days.
You know, I met with people, I met with survivors in the West that people have come out. So I know exactly, you know, how their stories are. And I also recently also read Francis Harrison's book, which is very painful reading. And some of these persons I've also met. And you know, their stories are just horrible. So these stories need to come out. I couldn't film these stories because I couldn't get in there, and I couldn't. You know, it's dangerous also to film them now, and so I had to focus on journalists in exile, those who actually risk their lives to tell the story, and also, you know, to tell the stories of journalists in exile. It's not only the case in Sri Lanka, but you know, journalists risk their lives in all over the world. All over the world, they do that. So
they can definitely make an impact on a change of lives, or I mean, the quality of lives for people. Like there was one incident, I think you'll remember. Soon after Cambodia's war in 1970s, John Pilger, he was from Daily Mirror, I think, in England, right? He is the one who first brought the news out of Cambodia, and that had changed the entire the picture. And journalists definitely, you know, we all know that, you know,
journalists, you know, it's a very important job, and you know, for democracies to be healthy, you know, they need a free media. They need people that are openly there to criticize the government and to criticize everything the government is doing. It's a very important job, and very healthy society needs very critical journalists. It's the job of a journalist to be critical. If you don't have any critical journalists, well, there is no democracy, basically.
But just as a comparison, during the second Gulf War, there were Western journalists embedded with the American forces there. You know, they have been taking on the guided tour, and that whatever the American side wanted to want the people to see is the one only shown. They were not independent journalists were allowed. And so what's the difference between that and the Sri Lankan case here?
Well, I think there were independent journalists also in those areas, but some of these films, they come out in film festivals. They're not screened in regular, you know, news broadcasts. But things do come out, and I've seen, you know, because I go to film festivals, I see there were quite a bit of critical films coming out. What impact they make, it's difficult to say, but eventually I think, you know, critical films do make people's opinions change. Very much so. There was a film that was very critical of the Vietnam War that back in the 60s won the Academy Award, and that was the first film that showed the suffering of the civilians in Vietnam War, and that was the first time you know, the American audience saw the war from a different perspective. So in a way, it's very important that journalists take independent stance and report independently. It's very important.
As a matter of curiosity, what happened to those two young women from the MDTT? Have you followed up with them?
I think one is not alive. We have not been able to contact her. The other one is actually alive, and she's safe.
Oh, okay, that's good to hear.
Yeah. The sad story is, what I was told by several people, is that when the film came out on DVD, the Sri Lankan government hunted down the mother. Oh, yeah. She lived in government-controlled areas, and I was told that she was killed both because she was the mother of a black tiger, and also because she had spoken to a foreign journalist, and for that she was executed, I heard. And I was so deeply affected by that, and I thought maybe I was never ever going to make any other films. And you know, it haunted me for weeks and months. And what I know, she's no longer alive. I've not been able to sort of confirm everything 100%. I've not been able to have anyone tell me.
Verify that, yeah.
No, I have not been able to do that. But as far as I know, no one has been in touch with her after 2008.
That's a sad story.
It's very
so
sad.
the same thing could happen to these journalists who have been assisting you in this. Do you think that ever crossed your mind that you are compromising their lives, their safety?
You know, I try to to be as careful as possible. I try to make certain that I don't jeopardize anyone's lives. For Silent Voices, I also filmed the story of the fourth journalist, journalist that had been very badly tortured. His family is not safe, so I couldn't release his story.
So, coming back to the Silent Voices, many of the journalists you said they are either hiding or living low profile. Their lives must have been shattered as well. How are they coping with the pressures of? They have all been traumatized as well.
I think the two major journalists, the two journalists they were sort of in the film. They are Sinhalese journalists. They from the majority Sinhalese community, and I think it's I think it's very hard to be suddenly regarded as a traitor, and you're forced to leave your country and you can't come back, and you're viewed as a traitor. I think that makes a huge impact on your life, and you're forced to come out to a country you don't have a network, you basically lose your platform as a journalist. So many, they're forced to work in factories, they're forced to do all kinds of jobs to basically survive. They're scattered all over in various countries, in various cities, and I think their lives they
lost, and then their self-esteem is.
I think it's very difficult, very difficult lives.
Even if they return back to Sri Lanka, even if the regime is changed, they will be viewed by the Sinhalese mass as traitors, not necessarily by the state.
It depends on it depends on how Sri Lanka moves. It depends on if they decide to open up and welcome these journalists again, and give them credit for openly criticizing. Give them credit for daring to criticize the government and tell the truth. That would be interesting.
It's a huge transformation to take place in the Sri Lankan
It's a huge
South,
transformation. It's a huge transformation. I think probably Sri Lanka has to deal with its own justice and truth before that. Yes.
The Tamil causes, like you said, the Western governments have been, I think, watched by the masses back home, have let them down big time, right? And then that's the only source, that's the only saviors that they have been looking up to, right? The bridge that can change the mentality, the change, the thinking of Western governments is by movies like this, documentaries, and that have to come out. So our people, even if the Tamilnet or any other Tamil medium brings the stories out, it won't be as authentic to the Western audience as the one that you brought out, or someone like yourself.
I found it difficult because it seemed like the entire Sri Lankan Tamil population were branded as terrorists. There was the government successfully kind of branded everybody. At the same time, the humanitarian catastrophe, the plight of the civilians, how it's probably one of the worst mass killings in decades, and the world hardly knows about it. Of course, it's of importance that the world finds out what was happening. It's important to everybody, not even only the Tamils, but everybody should know that when a government horns down and kills its own population, you know, it should be out there. Everybody should know, and such, such horror is not supposed to happen.
So, is the Tamil diaspora can do anything?
I think you constantly have to get evidence out. You constantly have to push NGOs. You constantly have to push the various governments to take action, so that that there is an international independent investigation. You need that. I don't think there will be any reconciliation until the truth comes out. There has to be justice. You can't ask people to go on and live when things like this happen. It proves again and again and again, you need justice, you need the truth to come out before there will be any peace in the area.
So, is the diaspora is doing what is expected of it?
I don't really keep track of. The diaspora is vast. You live in all continents of the world, and I don't really pay attention to everything you do. But I see myself more of a filmmaker, and I do this passionately because I have personal experience in the area. I know the people, I met the people, and I've seen this with my own eyes. For me, it has been important to tell the story in my way, the best, the best I'm capable of doing. Films like this is only one drop, and there are a million other ways to make sure that this comes to the surface, and that people knows this, and that there is action, and that politicians actually put pressure on every international body, on the UN, and make sure that things are brought to justice.
From what you have seen, heard, and from the grapevine, are there many more things to be coming out? Are there still stones to be unturned?
I'm sure there are lots of stones to be turned, lots of things that should come out, and I'm sure that also within the Sri Lankan military itself, it's much more evidence. There's much more knowledge to come out about this. It's just only now, you start to get things out. You start to have the survivor stories. You start to have there were lots of witnesses also within within the safe zones. There are lots of journalists that know things from the south that's still in Sri Lanka. That there's a lot of self-censorship. Still even today, more than 3 years after the war, there's no free press in Sri Lanka. I'm sure there are a million stories that need to come out. So this is just the very beginning.
Has any of the material that you've collected come from the military sources? I know it's a difficult question.
Some of it is portrayed in the film. Yes, there are photos coming from the military, and it clearly proves that the soldiers who were there, they had the mobile phones with cameras, and they took pictures of what took place. And they took horrible pictures, and they photoed, the most
cell phones, right?
With their cell phones, with their cell phones. So and there were journalists working with the government that took pictures and took photos. So there were, there was a lot of evidence out there, and of course, in all, there were a lot of journalists were killed for investigating, into the use of chemical weapons, the use of bombing hospitals, a lot of war crimes. There is evidence, and everything needs to come out.
Have you still withholding any of those evidences still for the next movie or next thing? Or
I don't withhold things that should come out like that.
No, not intentionally.
No, I don't. I don't. My story was sort of I wanted to film, you make a film about, how important journalists are for a healthy society, and also what risks they actually take for the truth to come out, and what personal risks they take.
Yeah, Sri Lanka seems to be cursed, like you said once. I read somewhere. As long as the government they justify the ongoing military and the police crackdown on civilians and treat all the dissenters as traitors, the curse will likely to continue. Anyway, thank you very much for appearing on this show, and we wish you good luck and hope to see the next one, part 2 of either of them. Thanks very much. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
சரணர்களே, இத்தோடு வெளிச்சம் நிகழ்ச்சி நிறைவுக்கு வருகின்றது. தன்னுடைய அனுபவத்தை பகிர்ந்து கொண்ட பியாட்டே ஆனிஸ்டாட் அவர்களுக்கு நேர்கள் சார்பிலும் கலையத்தின் சார்பிலும் நன்றி கூறிக்கொண்டு விடைபெறுகின்றோம். வணக்கம். இன்னும் ஒரு தடவை சந்திக்கும் வரை.